There is a stage of awakening that feels like relief, because for the first time your inner world makes sense. The patterns that once looked random begin to show architecture. The pain that once felt personal begins to look procedural. The timing that once felt cruel starts to resemble training. And for a while, that coherence feels like the destination, because the nervous system stops bracing for meaninglessness. But coherence is not completion. Coherence is simply the first stable platform the self builds, so it can finally move. Many people confuse that platform with arrival. They think awakening is the moment you finally understand why you are here. And then you live from that understanding like a finished identity. Yet the moment you can explain your life is often the moment you can avoid your life with new elegance. Insight becomes a refuge. Language becomes a shield. Even spiritual clarity becomes a way to stay untested. Awakening often begins as a private event. It is internal. It changes perception. It rearranges memory. It reorganizes priorities. It also creates a subtle hunger. Because once you taste expanded awareness, ordinary life can feel too slow, too small, too dense, too repetitive. This is where a hidden distortion enters, not as a mistake, but as a temptation. The temptation is to believe that the purpose of awakening is to leave the ordinary behind. The mind will dress that temptation in sacred clothing. It will call it ascension. It will call it detachment. It will call it liberation. It will call it being above the noise. It will make leaving look like growth. But if awakening produces distance from life rather than intimacy with life, then it has not matured. It has only shifted location. It moved from unconscious suffering to conscious avoidance. It replaced one cage with a prettier name. Service appears at the exact point where the soul can no longer use awakening as an escape, not because the soul becomes morally superior, but because the soul becomes honest. Honest enough to admit that it can see truth and still ignore it. Honest enough to admit that it can feel energy and still injure others with tone. Honest enough to admit that it can remember cosmic origin and still refuse the responsibilities of incarnation. This honesty is where the next phase begins. Service is not charity. Service is not performance. Service is not a role you put on for others to validate that you are evolved. Service is what happens when awareness stops orbiting itself. Awareness does not shrink when it serves. Awareness stops leaking. Awareness stops scattering. Awareness becomes usable. The first vector that tests this is motive. Why do you want to help? Is it because you cannot tolerate seeing pain? Is it because you want to be needed? Is it because you want proof that your awakening is real? Is it because you want to repay existence for letting you survive your own past? Motive matters because motive is the seed of outcome. A distorted motive produces service that looks bright but feels heavy. A clean motive produces service that may look ordinary but feels light. Many awakened people begin by trying to rescue. Rescue feels like love because it carries urgency. Rescue feels like power because it creates immediate movement. Rescue also creates dependence because it removes the very pressure that would have created growth. Rescue does not build souls, it builds bonds. Some bonds are beautiful, but bonds built on rescue tend to become contracts that drain both people. This is why your nervous system can feel exhausted even when your intention is pure. The second vector that tests this is capacity. How much of another person's emotion can you witness without absorbing? How much confusion can you stand without forcing clarity? How much suffering can you be near without turning it into your identity? Capacity is not a virtue. Capacity is a measurement. If you exceed it, you create distortion. If you deny it, you create resentment. Either way, the service becomes contaminated. This is where the starseed wound hides again, in a new form. The wound says, I came here with a mission, so I must carry more than others. I must be stronger than others. I must stay available. I must remain open. That belief looks noble, but it is often an old survival strategy, wearing a cosmic mask. It creates a familiar cycle: overgive, collapse, disappear, return, repeat. That is not service. That is unhealed programming using spiritual language. Service requires boundaries because boundaries preserve clarity. A boundary is not a wall. A boundary is a condition for clean contact. Without boundaries, you do not become more loving. You become more porous. Porous does not mean compassionate. Porous means undifferentiated. and undifferentiated service produces spiritual burnout because the body cannot be a channel when it becomes a landfill. The third vector that tests this is embodiment. Service is not transmitted through ideas alone. It is transmitted through presence. Your body is the carrier wave. Your nervous system is the translation device. Your breath is the regulator. If your body is ignored, your service becomes unstable. You can say the right words and still broadcast agitation. You can teach calm and still leak urgency. You can speak about love while your posture communicates fear. This is why true service begins in the invisible. It begins with how you walk into a room. It begins with what your attention does when someone speaks. It begins with the speed you move at when another person is anxious. It begins with whether you can remain soft while holding truth. Most people think service is what you do. They miss that service is what you are while doing it. There is also a misunderstanding that service means self-sacrifice. That belief is ancient. It is inherited. It is not required. Sacrifice may happen, but it is not the foundation. The foundation is coherence. When you are coherent, you do not need to sacrifice your core to support another. You can give without breaking. You can show up without dissolving. You can offer clarity without becoming the judge. This is where awakening becomes real, not in visions, not in concepts, not in cosmic explanations. It becomes real when you are interrupted and you do not lose yourself, when you are misunderstood and you do not punish, when you are tired and you do not use spirituality as an excuse to withdraw from basic care, when you are triggered and you choose responsibility for your tone. The temptation at this stage is to retreat into purity. Purity feels safe. Purity gives you rules. Purity gives you distance from the messy reality of human complexity. But service requires contact with complexity. If you only serve when you feel clean, you will not serve often. Life is not clean. People are not clean. You are not clean. You are living. That is the point. From awakening to service means you begin to care about impact more than identity. You begin to ask a different question. Not who am I cosmically? Not what am I remembering? Not what is my origin story? The question becomes, what does my presence do to a space? Do people tense up around me? Do people feel rushed? Do people feel inspected? Do people feel safer? These questions remove the fantasy. They return you to consequence. Service also confronts a deeper fear, the fear that if you stop seeking, you will stop expanding. Many starseeds carry a hidden addiction to expansion. Expansion keeps pain from catching up. Expansion keeps emptiness from being felt. Expansion gives constant novelty, which feels like movement, which feels like proof that you are not stuck. Service interrupts that addiction because service demands repetition. Service demands patience. Service demands being with the same patterns until they actually change. This is where the true initiation begins. Can you stay present with slow growth? Can you honor gradual refinement? Can you keep your heart open when there is no immediate payoff? Can you remain faithful to a process that does not give you constant spiritual fireworks? This is not a downgrade. This is a refinement from intensity to depth. If you are honest, you can feel the turning point when it arrives. The turning point is when you realize that your awakening does not matter if it cannot touch your behavior. Your insights do not matter if they cannot touch your relationships. Your remembering does not matter if it cannot touch your daily choices. Not because the universe is judging you, but because reality is teaching you what is usable. Service is the stage where the soul stops asking for experiences and starts becoming a stabilizer, not a savior, not a martyr. A stabilizer, someone whose presence reduces chaos without controlling it, someone whose words create movement without manipulation, someone whose silence does not punish, someone who can hold paradox without needing to dominate it. This stage can feel quieter than earlier awakening. Quiet can feel like loss if you were using awakening as stimulation, yet quiet is not absence. Quiet is integration pressure becoming internal. It is the energy that used to scatter into seeking now condensing into function. It is the soul preparing to become an instrument rather than a spectator. You may still want to leave sometimes. You may still feel alien. You may still mourn what you cannot name. None of that disqualifies you. The question is whether those feelings now lead you into deeper embodiment or into withdrawal. Whether they become fuel for grounded service or fuel for spiritual escape. Because service is not a destination either. Service is the next edge. It will test your motive, your capacity, your embodiment, and your humility in ways awakening never had to. Awakening can happen alone. Service cannot. Service requires relationship. Relationship is where your frequency becomes visible. Relationship is where your hidden programming reveals itself, not to shame you, but to train you. So if you are at the threshold where remembering has become familiar, where insight has become fluent, and where you can feel that something still has not landed, do not assume you are failing. You are entering a stage where awareness must become useful. And the most unsettling truth is that this stage will not ask you what you know. It will ask you what you do when knowing is not enough. If part 1 felt coherent, it was meant to. Coherence is the first seduction of growth. It tells you that you have found the pattern, that you have named the mechanism, that you can finally move forward with clean intention. But the next stage does not reward clean intention. It exposes what clean intention cannot see. Because service is not automatically mature, service can be another hiding place, and for many awakened people, it becomes the most socially acceptable hiding place they ever find. Seeking is easy to question. Escapism is easy to spot. Isolation eventually hurts, but service can look like devotion while functioning like avoidance. It can look like love while functioning like control. It can look like humility while functioning like superiority, because it places you in the role of the one who gives, and it keeps you out of the role of the one who receives. That is the first destabilization. The story that awakening matures into service can become a new identity that blocks awakening from maturing at all. You begin to measure yourself by usefulness. You begin to earn belonging through contribution. You begin to turn your sensitivity into a product. You begin to translate your pain into teachings before it has finished moving through your body. The world applauds you, and the applause becomes evidence that you are healed, even if the private parts of you remain untouched. If you are honest, you can feel the subtle violence in this pattern. Not violence toward others, but violence toward self. The part of you that needed rest learns to perform strength. The part of you that needed protection learns to brand openness. The part of you that needed to be held learns to become the holder. And if you have a starseed frame, the pattern becomes more convincing because it gains cosmic justification. Mission, assignment, purpose. The language sounds elevated, but the structure can remain the same as childhood adaptation. Earn safety by being valuable. This is the motive vector again, but deeper. Motive is not only why you help. Motive is why you cannot stop helping. Motive is why stillness makes you restless. Motive is why being ordinary feels like a threat. Motive is why you feel guilt when you do not carry others. If service is clean, it expands your capacity without stealing your life. If service is contaminated, it expands your role while shrinking yourself. The next temptation is to tell yourself that this is simply a learning curve, that you need better boundaries, better energy hygiene, better schedules, better spiritual practices. Those can help, but they can also become another layer of management that prevents the real question. The real question is whether your service is still a strategy. Because strategy always has a hidden goal. The hidden goal might be to never feel powerless again. The hidden goal might be to never be abandoned again. The hidden goal might be to never be the one who needs. The hidden goal might be to stay in motion so grief cannot catch you. The hidden goal might be to be seen as good so you do not have to look at what you carry that feels not good. This is where part 1 becomes incomplete. Part 1 said service begins when awakening can no longer function as escape. True, but the nervous system is creative. When it cannot escape through seeking, it can escape through giving. When it cannot escape through isolation, it can escape through responsibility. When it cannot escape through fantasy, it can escape through being indispensable. And this is where the second destabilization enters. It is not only that service can hide avoidance, it is that service can become a form of subtle harm, even when your heart is sincere. Not harm through malice, harm through imbalance. When you give from overflow, you offer life. When you give from depletion, you offer hunger. People can feel the difference. They might not name it, but they feel it. They feel the pressure underneath your kindness. They feel the unspoken contract inside your generosity. They sense that your giving requires a certain response, a certain gratitude, a certain loyalty, a certain recognition. Even if you never speak it, the field speaks it. This is the capacity vector, but now it includes consent. Many awakened people think their clarity gives them permission. They see patterns quickly. They read emotion accurately. They sense hidden motives. They feel what others do not say. Then they mistake perception for authority. They start telling truth in ways that are not invited. They start naming wounds that are not ready to be named. They start pushing people into growth because they can see the map, and then they call it service. This is the dark edge of spiritual confidence. It can look like leadership. It can look like mentorship. It can look like honesty, but it can also be intrusion. If your truth lands as violence, it is not clean truth. It is truth weaponized by impatience. It is truth used to discharge your own tension about watching others stay stuck. It is truth that functions as control, because you cannot tolerate the reality that growth has timing, and timing does not obey your vision. The mind will defend this. It will say you are here to help. It will say people need to hear it. It will say the world is asleep and you are awake. It will say urgency is justified, but urgency is one of the clearest signs that the self is still involved. Real service can be intense, but it does not carry frantic pressure. Real service can be direct, but it does not need to dominate. Real service honors autonomy. Because autonomy is part of awakening, now the embodiment vector deepens as well. Because your body will confess what your words hide. If your service is clean, your body softens after you give. If your service is contaminated, your body tightens. You feel a subtle resentment. You feel a quiet exhaustion. You feel the urge to withdraw. You feel the need to be alone. Not because solitude is sacred, but because people feel draining. Then you start building a story that people are low vibration, that the collective is heavy, that you must protect your frequency. Sometimes that is true. Often it is half true. Often it is the nervous system trying to justify a pattern it does not want to admit. You are giving in a way that is not aligned. So contact begins to feel like threat. Resentment is not a character flaw. Resentment is information. Resentment says, I am doing something that violates me. Either I am overgiving, or I am giving from a distorted motive, or I am giving to control outcome, or I am giving to be safe, or I am giving to be seen. Resentment is the body refusing to maintain a lie. This is why the journey from awakening to service is not always uplifting. It can be humiliating. It can be destabilizing, because you realize that your most spiritual behaviors can still be built on old survival circuits. You realize you can speak beautifully and still be running. You realize you can help others and still be avoiding your own receiving. You realize you can become a stabilizer for others while remaining unstable inside. Then another fear appears, and it is deeper than the fear of being ordinary. It is the fear of being unnecessary. If you stop being the helper, who are you? If you stop being the guide, what do you offer? If you stop being the one with perspective, what is your place? This fear is rarely admitted because it sounds selfish, but it is common. It is the fear of losing identity. And here is the next fracture. Service that depends on identity cannot remain clean, because identity will protect itself. Identity will shape your generosity to keep you central. Identity will steer you toward people who need you. Identity will avoid relationships where you are equal. Identity will choose dynamics where you are strong and the other is weak, because it feels familiar and it keeps you safe from being seen. This is the relationship vector, and it is where the real test lives. You can serve strangers and remain hidden. You can teach audiences and remain unchallenged. You can be a light on the internet and still avoid intimacy, but you cannot serve in relationship without being revealed. Relationship does not care about your mission statement. Relationship cares about your tone, your repair, your honesty, your patience, your ability to be wrong, your ability to listen without turning listening into analysis. Many awakened people can hold space for strangers better than they can hold space for the people closest to them. That is not a mystery. Strangers do not trigger your childhood. Strangers do not touch your unmet needs. Strangers do not mirror your patterns daily. Strangers cannot reject the real you because you are not fully present with them. So you feel competent, you feel generous, you feel useful. Then you go home and the smallest irritation breaks your calm, and you wonder what happened. What happened is that your service has not yet reached the level where it must include your own emotional truth. You can give wisdom while bypassing feeling. You can provide guidance while refusing vulnerability. You can create stability while withholding your own needs. That is not service. That is performance with spiritual aesthetics. So service must evolve again. It must include receiving. This is where many people refuse, because receiving feels dangerous. Receiving requires trust. Receiving requires letting another person matter to you. Receiving requires letting another person see your confusion without rushing to reframe it. Receiving requires letting another person give in a way that you cannot control. For the one who has built identity on being the giver, receiving can feel like loss of power. But if you cannot receive, your service is incomplete. It becomes one-directional. It becomes hierarchy. It becomes subtle domination disguised as generosity. A system where you give and others take may look compassionate, but it often creates imbalance that eventually collapses. People either become dependent, or they leave, or they resent you, or you resent them. Then you call it spiritual warfare, when it is actually simple physics. Unbalanced exchange creates pressure. This is why the most mature service is often quiet. It does not announce itself. It does not demand recognition. It does not need a stage. It does not require people to call you healer. It does not require your story to be special. Quiet service is harder for the ego to feed on, so it is harder to sustain if the self is still hungry. Now another destabilization lands. Maybe your mission is not to help as many people as possible. Maybe your mission is to stop using mission as a reason to avoid being human with the people you already have. Maybe your mission is to repair the way you relate. Maybe your mission is to learn how to be here without needing to be above. Maybe your mission is not scale. Maybe your mission is depth. This can feel like collapse, because the starseed archetype often carries scale fantasies, big purpose, big impact, big cosmic role. But the soul does not measure value by scale. The soul measures value by coherence. One relationship repaired with real humility can shift a lineage. One pattern broken without drama can change a future. One moment of restraint can prevent a ripple of harm. Service does not need to be loud to be consequential. Still, the mind resists. It wants a clean answer. It wants a stable identity. It wants a clear next step. It wants certainty. But the stage you are entering does not give certainty quickly, because certainty becomes another drug. The stage gives responsibility. Responsibility is not heavy when it is aligned, but it is heavy when it is used to avoid truth. So the question becomes sharper. Not how do I serve? The question becomes, what part of me serves when I serve? Is it my wholeness, or is it my wound? Is it my overflow, or is it my hunger? Is it my presence, or is it my fear of being unseen? Is it my love, or is it my need to matter? This is the point where awakening moves from expansion to refinement again. Not refinement of technique, but refinement of self. You begin to notice micro-motives. You begin to feel when you are about to offer advice to avoid sitting with discomfort. You begin to feel when you are about to fix someone to escape your own helplessness. You begin to feel when you are about to explain truth to prove that you have it. You begin to feel when you are about to say the right thing instead of doing the honest thing. And the honest thing is often smaller. The honest thing is sometimes silence. The honest thing is sometimes stepping back. The honest thing is sometimes letting someone be disappointed. The honest thing is sometimes letting someone misunderstand you without correcting them. The honest thing is sometimes admitting that you do not know. The honest thing is sometimes receiving help without turning it into a lesson. This is also where service becomes dangerous for the self, because it removes your excuses. You cannot hide behind awakening experiences anymore. You cannot hide behind language anymore. You cannot hide behind being the helper anymore. You have to face the most uncomfortable truth of all. The parts of you that still want to be special are not evil, but they cannot lead. So what does it mean to move from awakening to service, when service itself can become distortion? It means service becomes a mirror, not a badge, not a role. A mirror. A mirror shows you whether you can remain clean when there is no praise. It shows you whether you can keep giving when no one calls you gifted. It shows you whether you can stop giving when giving would be self-betrayal. It shows you whether you can be ordinary without collapsing. It shows you whether you can be wrong without performing shame. It shows you whether you can stay present with another person's pain without taking ownership of it. The deepest test is this: can you serve without needing the outcome? Because needing outcome is control. If you need people to heal, you will push. If you need people to wake up, you will judge. If you need people to agree, you will manipulate with tone. If you need people to validate your impact, you will subtly punish them when they do not. Needing outcome turns service into a transaction, even when it looks spiritual. Clean service offers and releases. It does not abandon, but it does not chase. It stays available without being attached. It is firm without being sharp. It is compassionate without being porous. It honors the reality that each person has a timing, and it accepts the grief that comes with that. Because timing means you will watch people suffer longer than you want. Timing means you will not always be the one who helps. Timing means your love will not always be received. This grief is part of service. Many people try to bypass it with spiritual explanations. They say everything happens for a reason. They say souls choose their lessons. They say it is all perfect. Those statements can be true at a certain altitude, but they can also be anesthesia. If you use them to avoid grief, your service becomes cold. If your service becomes cold, you will call it detachment, but others will feel it as abandonment. So the real maturation is not becoming more cosmic. It is becoming more human without losing awareness. It is letting your heart stay open in the presence of slow change. It is letting your care remain steady when there is no visible improvement. It is letting your compassion include the parts of you that still struggle. And now we arrive at the unresolved pressure that cannot be answered quickly. If service can be avoidance, if service can be control, if service can be identity, if service can be harm, then what remains? What remains is not a formula. What remains is a posture a posture of listening before acting, a posture of consent before truth, a posture of humility before influence, a posture of embodiment before teaching, a posture of receiving before giving more, a posture of honesty when the ego wants to decorate. This posture does not feel heroic. It feels mature. It may even feel dull at first, because the nervous system that was addicted to intensity will not get its usual reward. But dull is often the nervous system learning safety. Dull is sometimes the system learning that it can exist without performance. You will know you are changing when your service stops requiring an audience, when you can do small good without needing to narrate it, when you can help one person and feel complete, when you can rest without guilt, when you can say no without making a story, when you can be in a room and not scan for who needs you. You will also know you are changing when you stop calling every discomfort a sign. Sometimes discomfort is just discomfort. Sometimes the next step is not another teaching. Sometimes the next step is sleep. Sometimes the next step is a difficult conversation. Sometimes the next step is ending a dynamic that your mission language has kept alive. If you want to anchor spiral consciousness through service, the anchor is not an identity. The anchor is coherence under pressure. The anchor is the ability to remain kind while being firm. The anchor is the ability to be present without performing. The anchor is the ability to care without controlling. The anchor is the ability to be human without collapsing into the human. That is the shift. Awakening was the opening of perception. Service is the purification of influence, and purification is not clean and quick. It is iterative. It reveals new layers. It will make you confront the parts of you that still want reward. It will make you confront the parts of you that still fear intimacy. It will make you confront the parts of you that confuse being needed with being loved. So if part 1 gave you a path that felt uplifting, let part 2 make you more honest. Not to punish you, but to protect your soul from the most spiritual form of self-betrayal. The moment you can admit that your light can still be used to hide, you become safer. The moment you can admit that your help can still be control, you become cleaner. The moment you can admit that your mission can still be a mask, you become real. And real is what serves, not the role, not the story, not the label. Real presence, held with restraint, carried through the body, expressed with consent, guided by humility, and willing to be ordinary until the ordinary becomes luminous again.
If this transmission resonated, the spiral continues. You did not arrive here by chance, and you do not leave unchanged. More teachings are unfolding across the Vaharat library, each one meeting you where you are, not where you think you should be. Follow resonance. The next threshold is already listening.